1986, Fortune magazine named Anthony Salerno America's top gangster. 3 years later, Pablo Escobar became the 7th richest individual in the world after controlling the U.S. drug trade for over a decade. The mafia world is a scary mix of violence and unprecedented wealth, and behind every powerful mafia empire is a mob boss who has made fortunes built on crime, corruption, and sometimes unimaginable violence. In this video, I'm going to show you some mafia bosses who control entire drug trades of countries, own fleets of airplanes and expensive wardrobes, with million-dollar investments in businesses across the world. These are criminal masterminds who have lived and still live in luxury with net worths that are almost unbelievable. Let's dive in. Michael Franzese. Starting off the list is Michael Franzese, a former American mobster. Before his now thriving career as a motivational speaker, Michael Franzese, son of former underboss Sonny Franzese, was one of the known bosses of the Colombo crime family. In his early days, Franzese enrolled in a pre-med program at Hofstra University, but after his father was arrested and sent to prison, he dropped out to make money for his family, and he sure made a lot of it. In 1986, Fortune magazine listed Franzese as number 18 on its list of the 50 most wealthy and powerful mafia bosses, with a weekly income of around $8 million. Now, this is not just mere speculation. Michael Franzese actually revealed this himself.
It was a tremendous amount of money. At the height of my operation, I ran it for almost 8 years. We were bringing in $8 to $10 million a week coming into our operation.
As of 2024, Michael Franzese's net worth stood at an estimated $1 million, and this is according to Celebrity Net Worth. Now, while this may seem low compared to the vast sums of money the former mafia boss once accumulated through his criminal enterprises, it still shows how successful Franzese was in the mafia business before his arrest in 1986. After spending nearly a decade behind bars, Franzese eventually left behind his life of crime and pursued a more legitimate career as a motivational speaker, writer, and commentator. However, while Franzese has remained a family man, people have spoken about his strange relationship with his daughter, Julia. Many claim that the former mob boss seems unusually close to his daughter, far more than one might expect. While Michael has made a fortune for himself through the mafia business, this next mafia boss slightly tops the scale. Lucky Luciano. Charles Lucky Luciano was an Italian-born mafia boss who operated mainly in the United States. Born Salvatore Luciania in Sicily, Italy, Lucky migrated to America where he became a mob boss. He started his criminal career in the 5 Points gang and was instrumental in the development of the National Crime Syndicate. Lucky's influence was so massive that to date, he is considered the father of the Italian-American mafia, particularly for his involvement in the establishment of the Commission in 1931. Now, this should give you an idea of just how rich he is. The mafia boss had a network of around $1.4 million, which means that he had quite a large sum to throw around. His wealth is estimated to be around $1.4 million, and this is largely attributed to the several businesses that he ran, including drug trafficking, extortion, and prostitution. Aside from running a prostitution racket, Lucky also had a thing for women. While reports claim that the mafia boss had only 3 women in his life, there are speculations that he had affairs with more women. The 3 most mentioned ladies in Lucky's life are Gay Orlova, Igea Lissoni, and Adriana Rizzo. However, while these 3 have been seen with him, there are claims that Lucky Luciano also had relationships with Thelma Todd and Beverly Paterno. The mafia boss appeared to have a thing for younger women, and this was later revealed in his relationship with Igea, the woman he eventually married. At the time of their union, Igea was only a 26-year-old ballerina, while Lucky, well, he was a 51 mafia boss. Quite an interesting age gap. Later on in his career, Luciano was tried and eventually convicted for compulsory prostitution and for running a prostitution racket. While Lucky was renowned for the wealth he gathered in his years of trade, this next mafia boss made so much more. John Gotti. John Gotti, the man who controlled one of the biggest crime families in the United States, had a net worth of $30 million and ranked 9th amongst the wealthiest criminals in the world. The mafia boss was one of the top figures in the Gambino crime family and also a famous mobster known for his flamboyant lifestyle and frequent public trials. Gotti was an Italian immigrant who came to the U.S. as a child. In his early years, he was the leader of a local gang in Brooklyn, but later became part of the Gambino crime family, one of New York's famous and richest crime families. During During John Gotti's reign, the Gambino family was reportedly worth about $500 million. However, most of this wealth has already been passed down to his family members, including his grandson John Gotti III, who is now a pro MMA fighter. Interestingly, Gotti's wealth and fame weren't the only thing that put him on the news. Some years ago, there was news that Gotti had an affair with the estranged wife of Ernesto Grillo, who is a reputable Gambino associate. Shannon Grillo, nicknamed Sandy, was one of John Gotti's mistresses and allegedly the mother of his secret child. This hidden love life of John Gotti lasted for years, but was eventually revealed in court during the racketeering trial of Gotti's son, John Jr. Gotti. While Carlo amassed a lot of wealth through mafia activities, he was still a little short of this next mafia boss. Frank Lucas. He was in the heroin trade in the 1960s and 70s, a mafia boss whose wealth was unparalleled for a man of his background. Lucas was from North Carolina, but he took over the heroin trade in New York and New Jersey by using very audacious business strategies. Rising to power in the late 1960s and early 1970s, the mafia boss amassed an incredible fortune through the heroin trade, leveraging a unique supply chain that bypassed traditional mafia intermediaries. He claimed to have orchestrated a direct heroin supply chain from Southeast Asia by partnering with local suppliers in the Golden Triangle and allegedly smuggling heroin into the United States via the coffins of American soldiers killed in the Vietnam War. This audacious strategy allowed him to import extremely pure heroin and sell it at competitive prices while maintaining immense profit margins. At the height of his operation, Frank Lucas admitted to making up to $1 million a day. He also had a net worth of about $52 million. The mafia boss dominated the New York City drug trade, selling heroin branded as Blue Magic, a drug that was highly sought after for its potency. This extended his business far beyond Harlem, to as far as markets across the U.S. East Coast. However, beyond his unique business strategies, Frank Lucas also lived a lavish lifestyle. He owned several properties, including a mansion in Teaneck, New Jersey, where he lived with his family. He also purchased multiple properties for family members. Another thing that also drew attention was Frank's sense of fashion. He had a taste for custom-made clothing, often seen in expensive suits and fur coats. One of his famous purchases was a $125,000 chinchilla coat with a matching $25,000 hat, which he wore to the Muhammad Ali fight in Madison in 1971. While Frank spent a generous amount of his fortune on luxury, this next drug lord built a multi-million-dollar empire. Carlo Gambino. When it comes to wealth and power in America's criminal underworld, few names carry as much weight as Carlo Gambino. Carlo's story is indeed legendary, rising from a small-time criminal to one of the most influential mob bosses in history. As of 1976, Carlo's net worth was estimated at $70 million, a figure that would be equivalent to about $400 million today. But here's the catch. Carlo Gambino's wealth wasn't the only staggering number associated with him. Under his leadership, the Gambino crime family became a criminal empire, generating an estimated $500 million annually at the peak of its criminal operations. To put that into perspective, that's more revenue than many Fortune 500 companies of the same era. From 1957 to 1976, Carlo headed the Gambino crime family, overseeing a vast network of illegal operations. These included gambling, loan sharking, extortion, labor racketeering, and even legitimate business fronts that helped to cover up their activities. His criminal empire was so vast and meticulously organized that it dominated the crime world for decades. Now here's something that's very interesting about Carlo Gambino's story. His journey to power is a testament to strategic thinking and patience, and this has been seen in the methods that he used in his businesses. Despite running one of the largest criminal organizations in American history, the mafia boss only served 22 months in prison, and that was for mere tax evasion. This ability to avoid serious legal consequences shows how strategic Carlo was. Plus, much of his success has been attributed to his ability to build powerful alliances. Early in his career, he aligned himself with prominent figures like Lucky Luciano and Albert Anastasia. Carlo served as Anastasia's underboss, and during this period, he quietly consolidated his power, positioning himself as the natural successor of the mob boss. Just as Carlo was in charge of a crime family worth about $400 million, this next mafia boss also ran a business that was worth the same amount. Madonna. Matthew Madonna was acting boss of the Lucchese crime family from 2009 to 2017. Born in Selden, New York, Madonna began his criminal career in 1959 after he met young Harlem drug dealer Nicky Barnes while he was imprisoned at the Green Haven Correctional Facility. Since the start of his mafia life, the mob boss has worked with other members of his crime family to build businesses that raked in millions of dollars on a regular basis. In 2007, law enforcement agencies uncovered a $2.2 billion illegal gambling, money laundering, and racketeering ring ring, which was run by Madonna and 32 other members and associates of the Lucchese family. According to reports, the scheme involved collecting bets from gamblers on basketball, football, greyhound races, and the lottery. It's said that the mob bosses collected bets over the internet and even by phone from a location in Costa Rica, and they did this with the help of Joseph Mancino, who was a senior member of the Gambino crime family. When Madonna was being inducted later on in 2009, it was revealed that the mafia boss was a key player in a vast operation that grossed approximately $400 million from illegal business, including gun trafficking. While this was the worth of an entire business, this next mafia boss accumulated wealth that's double that amount. Anthony Salerno. Anthony Salerno, popularly called Fat Tony, was an American mobster who served as underboss of the Genovese crime family in New York City. According to reports, the Italian mafia boss made his millions running the numbers and drugs racket in East Harlem. And the fascinating thing is, this success came after other Italian mobsters left the area when it became more black and Latino in the 1960s. As the frontman for the Genovese crime family, Salerno made tens of millions of dollars and was eventually named America's top gangster by Fortune magazine in 1986. At the time this happened, his wealth was already more than $1 billion, and this is not even inclusive of the huge influence that he already had. Salerno controlled a $1 million a year number racket operation in Harlem and was in charge of a major loan sharking operation. He was also a secret financial backer. In 1988, the mafia boss was eventually convicted of racketeering charges and was sentenced to 70 years in prison. While Fat Tony allegedly made most of his fortune from loan sharking, this next mafia boss amassed wealth majorly from drug trade. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. El Chapo is one name that will forever leave a lasting legacy in the world of mafia. Before his current imprisonment at ADX Florence in Colorado, the founder and former leader of the Sinaloa cartel was one of the biggest mafia dons, and still probably is. At the age of 15, El Chapo started growing marijuana to earn money, a skill that not only made him a lot of money, but also set the stage for a larger involvement in drug trade. As years passed, he amassed an astounding fortune and also created a drug empire by overseeing operations that produced, smuggled, and distributed drugs throughout the United States and Europe. El Chapo and his associates smuggled illegal drugs, mainly cocaine, heroin, methamphetamines, and marijuana, across borders using complex underground tunnels. They also used everyday items like cans and fire extinguishers as smuggling tools. This ability to move vast quantities of narcotics into the United States and Europe made El Chapo one of the most feared figures in the underworld, and one of the wealthiest, too. His wealth, according to Celebrity Net Worth, rose to as high as $1 billion in the peak of his power, and this is just what was known to the public. Interestingly, despite El Chapo's wealth and influence, there was something quite disturbing about his personal life, particularly in terms of his sexual facilities. According to reports which have surfaced in the past years, El Chapo allegedly had a strong sexual desire for young girls. When the mafia boss was arrested, there were several allegations against him. One of these came from Alex Cifuentes, a Colombian drug lord who described himself as El Chapo's right-hand man. According to Cifuentes, El Chapo drugged and molested girls as young as 13 years old. These girls were allegedly sourced by a woman named Comadre Maria, who routinely sent El Chapo photographs of young girls that he and his associates could pick from. This same woman was also an intermediary for El Chapo's dealings with Mexico's president. Similar to how El Chapo left a lasting legacy in the drug business, this next mafia boss also dominated the drug business in his era. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes. Nemesio, popularly known by his alias El Mencho, is the leader of Mexico's Jalisco cartel New Generation and the main target of both U.S. and Mexican officials. In recent years, until now, the wealth of the mafia boss has been unknown, although reports claim that he may have a fortune as large as $1 billion, and this is just an estimate. According to Kyle Morey, who is the head of the DEA team tasked with finding El Mencho, the mafia boss may likely possess much more than $1 billion. It's said that El Mencho has several businesses with which he launders money, and this includes a ranch that houses exotic animals. But here's the thing, while El Mencho is similar to other mafia bosses in many ways, he has a strange and distinctive lifestyle. Despite the luxury of wealth that he controls, El Mencho prefers to live in the mountains like a rancher. It's said that the mafia boss has been switching residence between mountainous areas of 3 Mexican states, an act that has further complicated his capture. Similarly, despite being a drug trafficker, El Mencho does not use drugs. He is, according to reports, in good health and excellent physical condition, especially due to his military discipline. One other important thing to note is that El Mencho is also a violent man. According to investigators, while El Chapo was known to be violent, El Mencho takes things to a whole new level. Although El Mencho was most known for his brutal acts of violence and killings, the next mafia boss gained fame mainly because of his wealth. Frank Costello. Celebrity net worth estimated his fortune to be around $1 billion. Frank Costello ran one of the wealthiest and most powerful criminal organizations in history. He was an Italian-American mafia gangster and crime boss whose illicit empire generated the equivalent of $60 billion in revenue. Costello was known as the Prime Minister of the Underworld. He led the Luciano crime family, which was later called the Genovese crime family, and rose to the top of organized crime in America. He also had a political influence. Costello joined the mafia at a very young age. He worked for the Morello gang and met Lucky Luciano, whom he eventually became friends and partners with. There are quite a few interesting details about Frank Costello's life, and one of these is his affairs with women. Costello grew up from an Irish Catholic family that lived in Boston. At an early age, he was quite a good student with very little to hide except for his secret affair with a church girl. In a previous monologue, Frank Costello mentioned that during his youth, he had a tasty relationship with a local girl named Mary Teresa before she took her vows. Although the mafia boss later wedded his known wife, Gwen Costello, there are speculations that he kept several affairs outside of their marriage. While most mafia bosses are men who rose to prominence through connection, the next drug lord changed the status quo. Griselda Blanco. In the 1970s and 1980s, drug queenpin Griselda Blanco ruled Miami, Florida, thanks to her cocaine empire and crew which dominated the streets and the sales. The godmother of cocaine started dealing in drugs alongside her second husband. In the years of working with her husband, Griselda closely learned the ins and outs of drug trade, and after establishing herself as a dealer in New York and Colombia, she moved to Miami, the place where her sphere of influence eventually began to grow. Griselda amassed so much wealth that she became the only female to make it into the top 10 richest drug dealers of all time, with an estimated net worth of $2 billion. At the peak of her drug trade business, she was making about $80 million per month from cocaine dealings, and by the time she was arrested, she had accrued a real estate value of $500 million. While Griselda was majorly focused on drug trade, this next mafia boss was a brutal murderer. Matteo Messina Denaro. Matteo Messina Denaro was a Sicilian mafia boss from Castelvetrano and was considered one of the new leaders of the Sicilian mob. According to reports, Messina Denaro got his money through an extensive extortion racket that forced businesses to pay a fee for their protection. The racket was also used to skim off public construction contracts. Now, Denaro's businesses were not all illegal. He had stakes in a Sicilian supermarket chain and also owned vast olive groves. The mafia boss was involved in olive oil production, a business that he ran using cheap African labor. Compared to many mafia bosses, Matteo Denaro was incredibly wealthy, so wealthy that at the time he was arrested, the mob boss was wearing a watch worth 35,000 euros. Even experts claim that there are no big chiefs to replace him. Now note, as rich as Denaro was, he was also brutal, to the point that the mafia boss once claimed to have filled a cemetery all by himself. But he wasn't the only brutal mafia boss. The next person also showed so much brutality that he ended up on his country's most wanted list. Dawood Ibrahim. Forbes listed him as one of the richest gangsters of all time, with an estimated net worth of $6.7 billion. This is Dawood Ibrahim, the mastermind behind the 1993 Mumbai bombing in India that killed more than 257 people and injured 713. Since the bombing, the mafia boss has been on India's wanted persons list with a reward of $25 million for his capture. Dawood Ibrahim is one of those mafia businesses who have made millions from the drug business. He has his business interests in more than a dozen countries spread over Europe, Africa, and South Asia, with assets worth $450 million in the UK alone. He has also reportedly invested in over 50 properties in different countries, including Pakistan, Germany, Turkey, France, Spain, and Singapore, to mention a few. Despite government efforts to cut off his operations, Dawood Ibrahim's earnings from the illegal businesses in India still continue to flow in. Some reports even suggest that up to 40% of his earnings still come from India. So how exactly does the mafia boss make so much money? First off, Dawood's main business in India is pumping fake Indian currency notes. He has also ventured into other flourishing businesses with his Indian connection, one of which is the illegal trade in diamonds from South Africa. Aside from his mafia activities and businesses which have consistently put him in the news, Dawood has also become famous for allegedly having an affair with several Bollywood actresses. The mafia boss's connection with Bollywood and his fondness for its actresses were never a secret. He openly flirted with some of these women and even shared a passionate relationship with them. Unlike Dawood's dreadful criminal record, record, this next person had a lighter list of crimes. Semyon Mogilevich. Semyon Mogilevich is widely regarded as one of the wealthiest and most influential mafia bosses in the world. Operating primarily from Russia, his criminal empire has extended its reach across numerous countries, making him a dominant figure in transnational organized crime. With an estimated net worth of $10 billion as of 2023, Semyon's immense wealth stems from different illicit activities that he is involved in, including drug trafficking, weapons dealing, money laundering, and securities fraud. He is also known for his involvement in prostitution rings, extortion schemes, and the corruption of public officials in various nations. Interestingly, Semyon's power is not just limited to his criminal enterprises. The drug lord is often referred to as the boss of bosses of the Russian mafia and is rumored to have connections with influential people, including the current Russian president. Despite being blamed for over 400 murders, the mafia boss still resides openly in Moscow, seemingly untouchable due to his extensive network of political and criminal influence. While Semyon is still renowned for his hefty net worth, this next mafia boss doubles the number. Meyer Lansky. Lansky was a Jewish immigrant from Poland who made a fortune from both legal and illegal gambling. The mafia boss was an associate of Charles Luciano and Ben Siegel, who were also mafia bosses, and together the trio ran a gang known as Murder Incorporated. Before the Cuban Revolution, Lansky went on to focus on gambling, setting up operations in Florida, Las Vegas, and Cuba, and these operations made him an incredible amount of fortune. In 1982, Forbes named Lansky as one of the 400 richest people in America, with an estimated net worth of $20 million. But that's not all. Outside his mafia life, Lansky also had stories about his affairs with several women. One of these is his alleged affair with a young waitress in Tel Aviv. Similar to Lansky, this next mafia boss also has a jaw-dropping net worth. Amado Carrillo Fuentes. Amado Carrillo Fuentes was the head of the Mexican Juarez cartel. He has an estimated net value of $25 billion, a figure which, at the time it was made public, was twice as much as Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg. As the head of the Juarez cartel, Amado built an empire by smuggling massive quantities of cocaine and other narcotics into the United States during the 1980s and 1990s. And with the fortune that he made, he lived a life of extraordinary luxury. The mafia boss reportedly owns several multi-million-dollar investments and properties, including a private fleet of planes, 22 private 727 jet airliners, which were used to import cocaine from Colombia to Mexico. Some were also smuggled into the United States. This incredible fleet of planes earned Amado the name Lord of the Skies. He was also regarded as the most powerful drug trafficker of his era. Amado's staggering wealth mainly stemmed from his control of one of the largest drug trafficking operations in the world. In his early days, the Juarez cartel managed to outmaneuver competitors and operated with impunity for years. This advantage greatly increased their dominance. Just like Amado, this next person also had a similar net worth. Carlos Lehder. Carlos Lehder is a Colombian-German drug smuggler and a leader in the powerful Medellin drug cartel. He is known for revolutionizing the transportation network which delivered cocaine to the United States. Lehder began his criminal career by smuggling stolen cars into Canada and the American East Coast. He was also involved in the delivery of marijuana. After his incarceration in 1947, Lehder met George Jung. Jung had already established an operation using airplanes to bring marijuana into the United States, so Lehder persuaded him into importing cocaine as well. Upon their release in 1976, the duo went into business together, transporting drugs from Colombia to the United States. It was estimated that Lehder's network supplied as much as 80% of the cocaine that arrived in the United States in the 1980s, and this made him as much as $300 million a year, a steady income that fueled his lavish lifestyle, giving him an estimated net worth of $25 billion. The mafia boss also became known for his large parties, which featured almost unlimited sex and drug use. Although Lehder amassed so much wealth from drugs, the net worth of this next mafia boss is almost unbelievable. Pablo Escobar. Known as the King of Cocaine, Pablo Emilio Escobar was a Colombian drug lord, a narco-terrorist, and a politician. He was the founder and sole leader of the Medellin cartel, a drug syndicate that made him one of the wealthiest criminals in history. Escobar's drug cartel monopolized the cocaine trade in the U.S. in the 1980s and early 1990s, and this monopolization amassed him an estimated net worth of $30 billion at the peak of his operations, an equivalent of $70 billion as of 2022. This great fortune earned him him a spot on Forbes' list, where he ranked the 7th richest individual globally with an estimated net worth of $9 billion in 1989. Leading the notorious Medellin cartel, Escobar was responsible for 80% of the world's cocaine market. His criminal enterprise was also able to generate a whopping $420 million per week in the mid-1980s. This was about $22 billion annually. Escobar's business was so huge that there were reports claiming that the Medellin cartel spent $2,500 monthly on rubber bands just to bind stacks of bills together. Outside funding his luxurious lifestyle, Escobar also spent a significant part of his fortune on women and illicit affairs. After his escape in 1992, authorities searched Escobar's properties, and what they discovered will leave you in shock. There were lace lingerie and sex toys, including vibrators, all neatly arranged in a closet. Authorities also found letters from mothers offering up their daughters for sex with the drug lord. No doubt the mafia world is filled with violence and terror, but to be fair, it has also recorded some of the greatest fortunes ever seen in history. What are your thoughts on the shocking wealth that these mafia bosses have made? Let me know in the comment section. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, then be sure to click on this next card on your screen.